So by now you've no doubt heard about the Y2K-like incident that happened last week where a company known as CrowdStrike released an update to a bunch of Windows machines across the world that control critical infrastructure, airports, hospitals, things like that, and effectively bricked them, caused that famous blue screen of death. And yeah, people were wondering what is going on here, what's happened. I would not be surprised if a lot of people still don't know what's happened, just due to the sort of technical nature of what's going on here. So this video is just going to serve as a very brief explanation as to what has actually happened, because there is still some speculation being thrown around and things. And we now know kind of what's happened, but we still don't know exactly why it's happened. And we probably won't ever know. We don't really, we aren't able to see past the closed doors of CrowdStrike, obviously, so we don't really know. But we do know, based on a public announcement that they've made, sort of what the issue was and, you know, how it's been resolved and things like that. First of all, CrowdStrike, if you don't know, cybersecurity firm, they provide software for cybersecurity, right? In this case, their software, CrowdStrike Falcon, is effectively an antivirus on steroids, software that is used by businesses across the world as a all-in-one cybersecurity solution to prevent attacks and breaches and things like that, which is a bit ironic because the threat was CrowdStrike all along, apparently. But yeah, the issue, effectively in this case, stems from the level of privilege that this software has. Most software, as you know it, usually at most has admin privileges, user admin privileges within your system. It doesn't go beyond that sort of application layer of your computer. In this case, basically, CrowdStrike Falcon has what we call kernel access, kernel privileges. And the kernel, if you don't know, is a sort of program that runs in the very core of your computer's brain that effectively controls the processes and the order of how everything functions within your computer, from the operating system to the various hardware and devices and drivers and things like that that control your computer. That's all you really need to know about the kernel. Just to save sort of going into the technical detail of what that is, because that can get quite confusing if you aren't particularly into, you know, that sort of low level sort of technical knowledge and things. But that's all you need to know about that. And there's a level of separation there between the application layer and the kernel layer of the computer for good reason, right? For security reasons, right? That's all you need to know there. And in this case, the reason it's an issue is because basically this update was pushed, what we call an over-the-air update for Falcon, where there was a critical error within this update, caused by a file known as channel file 291, and there was various sort of files related to this channel file 291, which had what we effectively are calling a logic error within it. Basically just an unhandled error, right? What we tend to do in software is whenever an error comes up, we have error handling, so that the application doesn't just completely fall over effectively. But in this case, it wasn't being caught, right? So the whole thing was just coming to a halt and not going any further. It didn't know how to handle it. There's no error handling, so the whole thing would just fall over. And because of the level at which this software operates, this update would effectively cause Windows to stop functioning. Whenever this file was being referenced in the boot process, it would just fall over whenever it hit this error. And then you get that famous sort of blue screen of death that everyone has heard so much about. And so you're probably wondering, how is an update that's caused something like this being released to the world? That's the part where we're not really going to know exactly. All we can surmise really is that there's definitely been some kind of process issue here, a process breakdown. Updates like this for, you know, software that controls critical infrastructure and things like that, there's usually a process to test this sort of stuff first, right? There's various testing environments and QA and stuff that this has to go through. There's, you know, rollouts as well to smaller, I guess, pools of devices, and then it gets slowly introduced into bigger and bigger sets of, you know, machines and things. And then eventually, once we sort of have proven that we've got a sort of stable update, it then gets released as a stable update to the world, right? And in the case of cybersecurity, this is particularly important just due to the level of which it's dealing with. But there's been something at some point in the process that's been missed here, and for that to happen, several people have to be at fault, right? There's no individual person at fault for this. The person that pushed the code update that caused it, it's not their fault. You know, the one QA engineer that maybe didn't look at something, it's not their fault. It's collectively the fault of a whole process falling over. Yeah, we'll never know the specifics of why that's happened, but it's a big blunder that effectively the whole company is at fault for. No individual person, just the whole company. That's kind of how we look at these things. Now you're probably wondering, why is this still an issue, right? The issue itself is quite a simple one, and on CrowdStrike's end, they fixed it quite quickly. But the the issue lies in how everyone else fixes it, right? Because of how this software functions, it as I said, it has kernel access. It needs access to the kernel for various functions and things. And this file that's at fault here is obviously being referenced during the boot up process. So you can't actually get into the computer to boot it up and then do the following update that actually fixes the issue because of this, right? It's not even getting to that point. It's just fallen over before it can even boot, essentially. The operating system is just not even working anymore. And so the actual process to fix this then becomes very manual, right? So what you then effectively have to do as an IT person is boot the computer or server, whatever device that it is, into safe mode and go through the command line and manually delete the offending files. To sort of dumb the process down a little bit. And if you're not like an IT person or anything like that, that's an incredibly daunting ask and challenge. And even IT people, where it's quite a labour-intensive process. They have to go through each individual machine and do the same thing over and over again. And so you can imagine, with millions of systems affected, it's going to be a long process. Now, luckily, the process has been made a bit simpler. Microsoft, while it isn't directly their fault, they have been affected by this, and they obviously don't want to look bad. So they're trying to help out where they can, and they've actually released a tool which can be used to automate this process somewhat. Doesn't entirely automate the process, but they're doing what they can to try and create some kind of bootable device which basically will run a script that helps you do this stuff, rather than having to manually do everything. Which is nice. It's nice to see that they're trying to get involved and help out. It does affect their reputation as well, obviously, but it is important to mention here that this isn't directly Microsoft's fault. While the issue did only, in this case, affect Microsoft, in this case, Windows machines, it wasn't caused by anything on their end directly, right? It's not really a Microsoft issue. I've seen a lot of news outlets and stuff sort of tying this back to Microsoft, and it's not really a Microsoft issue at all. You could argue that it's indirectly a Microsoft issue just due to the way that Windows functions and operates, hence why it's only a Windows issue, not like a Mac OS or Linux issue. But it's not anything they have done themselves. This is basically, I would say, 99% a CrowdStrike issue. They are the ones that released the update that caused this error and so on. So that's kind of the deal there. Hopefully that explains everything. Obviously there's some kind of technical details and stuff I've skimmed over as to exactly what's happened and the solution and things like that. In the interest of kind of just explaining this to anyone who maybe doesn't know what's going on here, it's not a cyber attack. It's just company has cut a few corners and paid the price dearly for it, as well as the rest of the world, because businesses have lost a lot of money over this, a lot of business over this. People might have even died over this, in the case of hospitals and things. So it's a very serious ongoing issue. And yeah, hopefully it's resolved soon, but I don't see CrowdStrike getting away with this particularly easily. It is a massive history-making blunder, I would say. As I mentioned at the start of the video, Y2K like. We're only 24 years late for that instant. But anyway, If you like the video. If you're still confused about anything, of course, comment below and let me know if you've got any questions. I'm sure either I or someone else will help you out. Yeah, if you like this sort of stuff, subscribe. Of course, if you're new here, if you don't know, I'm Steve-O. I talk about software development things, sometimes tech news and stuff as well as I'm doing here, and just talk about my journey through tech and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of content, then stick around and subscribe. Like the video if you liked it, and yeah, hopefully I will see you around for the next one.